The courtroom was silent, the air heavy with expectation and dread. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her late 50s, gripped the gavel with trembling authority. No one noticed the faint tremor in her hand as she glanced at the defendant, Mark Rivers, a 32-year-old man whose eyes refused to break from the empty wooden bench in front of him. His attorney, Anna Clark, stood motionless, her jaw set with a determination that bordered on despair. Every person in the room held their breath. The district attorney, Paul Jensen, a man in his 40s with steel-gray hair, shuffled his notes in anticipation. The families watched from the gallery, faces etched with grief and hope in equal measure. In that suspended moment, the gavel slammed down, echoing like thunder. "Judge Morrison," said the court, "has reached a verdict." The words seemed to hang in the room, drawing out the agony. Anna clenched her fists, her knuckles pale. Mark whispered, "Please," so softly it vanished beneath the weight of silence. Judge Morrison's voice wavered. She said, "We find the defendant." The statement sliced through the hush, but the verdict was not spoken. A sudden gasp burst from the crowd, heads whipping toward a figure near the door. Someone cried out, "Wait, I have evidence." In that instant, the world tilted. Anna turned, eyes wide, heart pounding. Justice itself seemed to pause, uncertain which direction to turn. In the confusion, doubt swept through every soul present, like a storm promising devastation. Shock paralyzed the courtroom. Judge Morrison's gavel hovered in mid-air, never quite falling, suspended by the sudden eruption of chaos. Anna's breath caught in her throat. The stranger, dark-haired, breathless, his face streaked with panic, rushed to the front, waving a manila envelope like a lifeline. Security guards moved, but hesitated, eyes locked on Judge Morrison for orders. Mark's mother sobbed in the gallery, hope flickering in her wrinkled hands. Paul Jensen frowned, his composure cracking for just a moment. The stranger gasped, "This is evidence you haven't seen. Please, you have to look. An innocent man is about to lose everything." Judge Morrison's mask of authority slipped. She stared at Anna, then Mark, then the gallery, confusion and fear clouding her usually sharp gaze. Anna said, "Your Honor, please, let him be heard." Mark clung to the table, knuckles white, eyes shining with new hope and terror. The gallery erupted in whispers. Paul Jensen protested, "This is highly irregular, Your Honor." Judge Morrison raised her hand, voice unsteady. "Order. Bring the evidence forward." The moment teetered on the edge, truth clawing its way into the light, justice balancing on a knife's edge. Anna's heart hammered as the young man stumbled to the front. His shoes squeaked on the marble floor, echoing in the stunned silence. He thrust the envelope toward the bench, voice cracking, "These are texts and security footage." Mark was nowhere near the scene. Judge Morrison signaled the bailiff to retrieve the evidence. Anna's mind spun, piecing together fragments. This man, this moment, a chance at redemption. The gallery leaned forward, breathless, a collective plea for justice. Paul Jensen's eyes narrowed. He said, "Objection, Your Honor. This material has not been authenticated. We have procedures for a reason." Anna snapped back, "With all due respect, an innocent man's life hangs in the balance." Judge Morrison examined the trembling envelope, eyes tracing every movement. The bailiff handed her the envelope. She weighed it in her hands, uncertainty written across her face. Anna saw the doubt flicker. Justice might yet prevail, if only for a heartbeat. Mark watched, his world balanced on the envelope's thin edge, hope fighting with fear inside him. The courtroom felt colder as Judge Morrison broke the envelope's seal, extracting a flash drive and several crumpled printouts. She said, "We will review this material immediately." The bailiff connected the drive to the court's projector. Flickering images appeared, grainy video from a gas station security camera. Anna's breath stopped as a time-stamped image showed Mark buying coffee at the moment of the crime. Paul Jensen scowled, but his mask of certainty fractured. Anna whispered to Mark, "We have a chance." Mark nodded, eyes brimming with relief. The gallery murmured. Judge Morrison stared at the screen, jaw tightening as she realized the magnitude of the oversight. The young man who brought the envelope stepped back, tears of desperation on his cheeks. He said, "I couldn't let an innocent man pay for something he didn't do." Judge Morrison exhaled shakily, voice low. "This evidence changes everything." The weight of justice shifted as hope pierced the courtroom's gloom. Mark's hands shook uncontrollably, disbelief and hope warring on his face. Anna reached for his arm, steadying him as the room buzzed with nervous speculation. Judge Morrison said, "Court is adjourned for a 15-minute recess. All parties will remain present." The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise." Chairs scraped as everyone stood, the spell momentarily broken. Paul Jensen stormed from the prosecution table, lips pressed thin with frustration. Anna leaned into Mark, her whisper fierce, "We're not done fighting, but this is our chance." Mark nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. In the gallery, Mark's mother collapsed into quiet sobs, her hands trembling with a hope she hadn't dared to feel. The young man who delivered the envelope stood near the exit, watching, uncertain if he'd done enough. As the judge retreated, sunlight streamed in, cutting through the haze, bathing Anna and Mark in fragile light, a promise that justice, though battered, might yet find its voice. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving only a tense circle of officials and lawyers. Anna paced by the defense table, her mind racing through every detail of the new evidence. Mark sat, hands trembling, the fragile thread of hope tightening around him. Judge Morrison remained at the bench, eyes narrowing as she prepared to scrutinize the evidence herself. Paul Jensen stood nearby, jaw clenched, eyes sharp with suspicion and calculation. Outside, the murmurs of the waiting press grew louder. Anna said quietly, "This changes everything, but the real test begins now." Mark's voice barely escaped. "Will they listen? Will they believe?" The judge interrupted, "We will proceed with immediate review. All parties will have access to the files. Any attempts to obstruct justice will be met with consequences." Paul's retort was cold, "We'll see what the truth holds." Anna met his gaze steadily. Justice is not about convenience. It's about the facts. The room's atmosphere thickened with uncertainty, every player aware that this case was no longer just legal. It was a battle for truth itself. Later that afternoon, Anna and Mark met in a quiet hallway outside the courtroom. The tension between them was palpable, but laced with cautious hope. Anna said, "We have only one shot to prove his innocence. The prosecution will fight dirty." Mark nodded. "I'm ready, whatever it takes." Anna pulled out her phone, showing security footage, timestamps and texts. "These are holes in their case that no one expected." Mark swallowed hard. "If this goes wrong..." His voice faltered, but Anna interrupted firmly. "It won't. I won't let it." The hallway echoed with distant footsteps and muffled voices. Anna's determination radiated like a shield, and Mark found strength in her resolve. "We fight not just for you," she said, "but for everyone betrayed by a broken system." His eyes filled with gratitude and fear. The shadows lengthened as the sun dipped, casting their figures long and resolute. Outside, the city moved unaware, while inside, a storm brewed. Back inside, Paul Jensen convened with his team in a glass-walled conference room. The clock ticked loudly as tension thickened the air. Paul's voice was sharp. "We can't afford to let this evidence stand unchallenged. Find anything to discredit it, no matter what." His assistants nodded, pulling laptops and documents toward them. The room buzzed with whispered plans and hushed urgency. One junior lawyer hesitated. "What if the footage is authentic? We need a backup plan." Paul's glare silenced doubts. "Then we pivot, dig into Mark's background. Anything that can muddy the waters." Outside the room, the city lights flickered as dusk settled. The gears of power turned mercilessly, grinding down any semblance of innocence. In the quiet, Paul muttered, "Justice isn't about truth. It's about winning." That evening, Anna returned home exhausted but unwilling to surrender. She spread out papers across her kitchen table, illuminated by a single overhead light. Mark's case files, witness statements, the newly discovered evidence, all tangled in a maze of half-truths and omissions. Anna muttered to herself, if we can prove this alibi, everything falls into place. Her phone buzzed with messages from Mark's mother, pleading for hope. Anna paused, swallowing her fatigue. Outside, rain began to patter against the window, a steady rhythm matching her relentless mind. She said quietly, "This is more than a case. It's a reckoning." Her reflections stared back at her, eyes burning with determination. Somewhere, in the shadows of the city, the real enemy waited, watching every move. But Anna wasn't afraid. Not yet. The next morning dawned gray and heavy with threat. Anna arrived early at the courthouse, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Mark followed, quieter but no less determined. They exchanged a glance of shared resolve. Judge Morrison called the courtroom to order, her voice steady but wary. The defense presented the new evidence formally, each item detailed with precision. The prosecution countered with sharp objections, trying to discredit every claim. The gallery leaned forward as tensions spiked. Anna whispered, "Stay strong." Mark nodded, voice firm, "For truth." Outside the windows, dark clouds gathered, rain threatening to burst. In the chamber of justice, the battle lines had been drawn clearly, between hope and doubt, innocence and accusation, light and shadow. The courtroom hummed with tension as the defense began calling witnesses. Anna stood poised, her voice steady but passionate. "We call Officer Hayes to the stand," she declared. The officer, a man in his early 40s with a weary expression, took his oath and seated himself. His testimony began cautiously, but soon revealed cracks in the prosecution's timeline. He admitted, "I didn't see Mark at the scene during the incident." Anna pressed gently, "Can you confirm the time you arrived and your observations?" His voice faltered, "I arrived after the reported time. The scene was already secured." The gallery leaned in, whispers rippling through the air. Paul Jensen shot a glare at Anna, but she held her ground. Mark's eyes shimmered with a mix of relief and disbelief. Judge Morrison watched intently, her features unreadable. The battle for truth sharpened its edges. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling window panes as if nature itself was reacting to the unfolding drama. Next, the defense presented security expert Lisa Nguyen, a woman in her mid-30s with a sharp intellect and calm demeanor. She explained, "The footage presented shows timestamps that could be manipulated." Anna nodded approvingly. "Can you verify the authenticity of these files?" Lisa tapped her laptop, displaying metadata. "According to my analysis, these files have inconsistencies." Paul Jensen countered, "Objection. Speculation without concrete proof." Lisa replied firmly, "The data speaks for itself." The judge allowed the testimony, signaling the weight it carried. The courtroom fell into a thoughtful silence, the gears of justice grinding against the grain of certainty. Mark's hope grew, but so did the invisible tension. The prosecution was now visibly rattled, and the battle was only beginning. The prosecution countered with a surprise witness, an eyewitness named Daniel Collins, a nervous man in his late 20s. His shaky voice filled the courtroom. "I saw Mark near the scene that night." Anna's eyes narrowed, sensing the setup. She questioned sharply, "How certain are you of your statement? Could there be confusion?" Daniel hesitated, glancing at Paul Jensen for reassurance. The judge intervened. "Answer the question, Mr. Collins." The courtroom held its breath. Daniel stammered, I'm sure." But a flicker of doubt crept into his eyes. Anna pressed further. "Were you under any influence or stress at the time?" Daniel's face twisted. "I had been drinking, yes." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the gallery. Judge Morrison's gaze sharpened, signaling the defense's opening to dismantle this testimony. Anna took the opportunity to expose Daniel's unreliability. "Mr. Collins, you admit to being under the influence and possibly mistaken?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I don't remember clearly." Anna continued, "So your testimony is based on uncertain memories?" The courtroom tension spiked as murmurs rose. Paul Jensen's facade cracked. He whispered harshly, "Objection," badgering the witness. Judge Morrison, firm but fair, reminded, "Counselor, proceed with respect." Anna's voice softened. "The truth matters above all, Your Honor." Daniel's testimony crumbled piece by piece, and the scales of doubt tipped further toward Mark's innocence. Outside, the last light of day faded, leaving shadows to deepen the courtroom's mood. Justice felt fragile, hanging in balance between hope and despair. As the day closed, Anna met Mark outside the courthouse steps, both weary but determined. She said, "This is far from over, but every doubt we cast is a victory." Mark looked at her. "I don't know how to thank you." Anna smiled faintly. "Keep fighting. The truth needs your voice." The sky darkened with gathering clouds, hinting at the storm still to come. Behind them, the courthouse loomed like a fortress of fractured justice, indifferent and imposing. The world outside moved on unaware, but inside, the fight for truth burned fiercely. Anna's resolve hardened, Mark's hope endured. And somewhere deep within, the case was no longer about one man. It was about justice itself, fragile, elusive, but fiercely needed. The courtroom reopened with a charged atmosphere, the air thick with anticipation. Anna stood by the evidence table, her hands steady, but her mind racing through every possibility. Judge Morrison presided with an unyielding gaze, her presence commanding silence and attention. Paul Jensen rose swiftly, voice sharp. "Your Honor, new evidence has been uncovered by the prosecution." Anna's heart tightened, but she kept her composure. The judge responded calmly, "Let it be presented, but fairly and transparently." Paul revealed a sealed envelope, producing it with deliberate gravity. The room tensed, every eye fixated. Anna whispered to Mark, "This could change everything, or nothing at all." The gallery sat on edge, breathless, as the legal duel intensified. Shadows lengthened across the polished floors, as if darkness itself was encroaching on the fragile light of truth. Paul Jensen carefully opened the envelope, extracting a thick folder of documents. His tone was deliberate. "These are financial records linked to Mark Rivers, suggesting motive and suspicious transactions." Anna's eyes narrowed, sensing the weight of this new threat. She replied calmly, "Your Honor, these documents have not been verified for authenticity and should be scrutinized thoroughly." Judge Morrison nodded. "They will be admitted but subject to verification." Mark's face paled as murmurs spread through the courtroom. Anna thought quickly, if these are fabricated, it's a calculated attempt to sway the jury unfairly. Paul's expression was unreadable, but the tension between them was palpable. Outside, a sudden gust rattled the courtroom windows, a fitting metaphor for the storm brewing inside these walls. During recess, Anna met with a trusted investigator, Maya Chen, in a cramped coffee shop dimly lit by a flickering neon sign. Maya handed Anna a USB drive and said quietly, "I dug into those transactions. Some of the accounts linked to shell companies, possibly set up to frame Mark." Anna exhaled sharply, her resolve hardening. "This is the break we needed," she said. Maya nodded. "But watch your back. Whoever's behind this is powerful and ruthless." Outside, rain lashed against the window pane, matching the urgency in Anna's heart. The clock ticked loudly, reminding her time was running out. She slipped the drive into her bag, steeling herself for the battles ahead. Justice, she knew, was never handed over easily. Sometimes it had to be seized. Back in the courtroom, Anna presented the newly uncovered evidence with deliberate clarity. "Your Honor, this USB contains forensic proof undermining the prosecution's claims. We ask that this be admitted for review." Paul Jensen rose, voice sharp. "Objection. Late evidence submission is unfair and prejudicial." Judge Morrison considered both sides, her voice steady. "Given the gravity, the evidence will be reviewed, but the court reserves the right to rule on its admissibility after examination." The gallery buzzed with anticipation as tension tightened like a noose around the prosecution's case. Mark looked to Anna with renewed faith, whispering, "Thank you." Anna replied softly, "We fight every step." Outside the windows, clouds broke, allowing slivers of sunlight to cut through, a fragile symbol of hope. As the court adjourned for the day, Anna and Mark stepped outside into the cool evening air. The weight of the day lingered, heavy but not crushing. Mark said quietly, "Do you really think this will turn the tide?" Anna looked up at the deepening sky, stars beginning to appear. "It has to. For justice to survive, we must believe in every chance." She reached out, squeezing his hand reassuringly. The courthouse behind them stood solemn, a silent witness to their struggle. Around them, life moved on, oblivious to the battles waging inside those walls. Yet for Anna and Mark, every moment was a step toward redemption or ruin. The night air was sharp and filled with promise. Whatever the dawn would bring, they would face it together. The courtroom buzzed as the defense called their final expert witness, Dr. Emily Carter, a forensic analyst in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. Anna introduced her. "Dr. Carter will testify on the chain of custody and digital evidence integrity." Dr. Carter explained, "The metadata analysis confirms tampering with the prosecution's evidence files." The room fell silent, tension thick as Judge Morrison leaned forward. Paul Jensen stood abruptly, voice tight. "Objection. This is conjecture without physical proof." Anna countered firmly, "Her credentials and methodology speak volumes, Your Honor." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "The court will allow the testimony, but the prosecution may cross-examine." Mark's eyes glistened with hope as Anna's confidence radiated, the scales of justice seeming to tilt ever so slightly. Outside, clouds gathered ominously, mirroring the storm raging within the courtroom walls. During cross-examination, Paul Jensen pressed Dr. Carter relentlessly. "Isn't it possible your analysis is flawed due to corrupted source files?" Dr. Carter's voice remained steady. "I accounted for file integrity in every step." Paul's frustration grew, but the defense is twisting data to create doubt. Anna interjected, "Truth demands scrutiny, not dismissal." Judge Morrison observed carefully, allowing the back and forth. The courtroom felt electric, every word a battle strike. Mark gripped his seat, heart pounding as Dr. Carter methodically dismantled the prosecution's digital narrative. The jury absorbed every nuance, and the prosecution's facade showed cracks. Outside, the wind howled, a restless force echoing the courtroom's storm of truths and lies. That evening, Anna and Mark met at a quiet park bench, the city lights shimmering behind them. Anna said, "We've shaken their case, but this fight isn't over." Mark looked tired but resolute. "Every minute feels like a lifetime." She smiled softly. "Sometimes that's the price for justice." The night air was crisp, carrying distant sounds of the city alive but indifferent. Anna's phone buzzed. A message from Maya. "Found something new. Meet tomorrow." Anna's eyes sparkled with cautious optimism. Mark squeezed her hand. "Whatever comes next, I'm ready." They sat in silence, the fragile bond of hope strengthening as stars blinked faintly above. The battle continued, not just in court, but in every whispered truth and shadowed lie. The next day, Maya delivered explosive new findings in a confidential meeting. "These documents link a high-ranking official to evidence tampering," she revealed quietly. Anna's breath caught. This could expose the corruption poisoning the system. Maya nodded gravely. "But it's dangerous. They'll come after us." Anna's resolve hardened. "We have to risk it. The truth can't be buried." Outside the office window, storm clouds loomed, shadows lengthening ominously. The stakes had escalated beyond the courtroom into a shadow war of power and deception. Anna knew this could break the case wide open, or shatter everything they'd fought for. But turning back was not an option. Justice demanded courage, no matter the cost. That afternoon, Anna confronted Paul Jensen outside the courthouse. Her voice was steady. "I know what you're hiding. This case isn't about justice, it's about power." Paul's jaw tightened, eyes hardening. "You're playing a dangerous game." Anna met his gaze unflinchingly. "Truth doesn't fear exposure." A crowd gathered nearby, unaware of the silent war waging between them. The courthouse loomed, indifferent and imposing. Rain began to fall softly, blurring the sharp edges of confrontation. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Anna turned and walked away, leaving Paul staring after her, the unspoken battle far from over. Justice was no longer just a courtroom struggle. It was a fight for the soul of the system itself. The courtroom buzzed with an electric tension as the defense laid out the timeline one last time. Anna's voice was steady but urgent. The digital evidence conclusively proves Mark's innocence during the time of the crime. Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed, scanning every document, every pixel on the screen. Paul Jensen's jaw clenched. His protestations grew sharper, but less certain. Mark sat upright, his fingers tightly interlaced, heart pounding with cautious hope. The jury exchanged glances, the gravity of the moment pressing down. Anna continued, "The prosecution's case rests on shaky ground built on manipulated evidence and unreliable witnesses." She paused, locking eyes with the jury. Outside, dark clouds gathered ominously, mirroring the storm brewing inside these hallowed walls. Justice, fragile and fierce, balanced on the edge of a gavel's fall. The prosecution scrambled to respond, calling a surprise forensic witness, Dr. Harold Simmons, a man in his late 50s with a commanding presence. His voice was steady but laden with doubt. While the defense raises valid concerns, some data remains unverified. Anna's gaze sharpened. "Which data, doctor?" Simmons faltered. "The integrity of the chain of custody for certain files." Paul Jensen's eyes gleamed, sensing an opening. Anna countered smoothly, "Your Honor, this uncertainty has been addressed extensively, and the defense has provided compelling proof of tampering." The courtroom held its breath as Judge Morrison weighed every word carefully. The tension coiled tighter, justice scales teetering between truth and deception. Outside the courtroom, whispers swirled like a gathering storm. Anna and Maya met quickly in a shadowed corridor. Maya said urgently, "I found irregularities in the official records. Someone's been deleting files related to the case." Anna's jaw tightened. "This goes beyond one man. We're fighting a system." Maya nodded grimly, "And that system fights back hard." Anna's eyes flashed with determination. "Then we'll fight harder." Their footsteps echoed, sharp and sure, as they prepared to bring the hidden truth into the light. The corridor felt cold, but their resolve burned bright against the dark. Justice was no longer just a matter of law. It was a battle for the soul of the city. Back in court, Anna presented the newly uncovered deletions with undeniable clarity. "Your Honor, the destruction of official records is an obstruction of justice." Judge Morrison's eyes flashed with resolve. "This court will investigate these claims immediately." Paul Jensen's expression darkened, his confident facade beginning to crack. The gallery murmured with rising tension, the stakes higher than ever. Mark's grip on Anna's hand tightened as hope and fear collided. Anna whispered, "This is our moment." The judge's voice rang clear. "We will not tolerate deception in this courtroom." The room seemed to hold its breath, caught between the looming threat and the promise of truth. As the day ended, Anna and Mark stood outside beneath a bruised sky. Mark asked quietly, "Do you think justice will finally win?" Anna looked upward, the wind catching her hair. "Justice is messy and slow, but it finds its way. We just have to hold the line." Mark exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift, if only a little. The courthouse behind them loomed, a monument to battle and truth. Around them the city continued, oblivious yet forever changed by the fight within those walls. Anna's eyes met Mark's, unspoken promises hanging in the cool air. Whatever came next, they would face it together, because justice was more than a verdict. It was a fight worth everything. The courtroom was packed, silence heavier than ever before. Judge Morrison looked over the jury with solemn gravity. Anna stood steady, her eyes locked on the foreperson as the verdict was about to be read. Mark sat motionless, heart hammering, fists clenched tightly in his lap. Paul Jensen stood rigid, face a mask of controlled tension. The foreperson cleared their throat and announced, "We the jury find the defendant." A long breath filled the room as all waited. The judge's eyes flickered with emotion, the weight of justice pressing down on everyone present. Then came the words that shattered the silence, "Not guilty." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Anna's eyes welled up. Mark's hands shook with disbelief and relief. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as hope, pain, and justice collided in that single moment, forever altering their lives. The courtroom erupted in a mixture of cheers and stunned silence. Mark's mother sobbed openly in the gallery, clutching Anna's hand. Paul Jensen looked away, jaw clenched, the loss cutting deep. Judge Morrison called for order, voice steady but gentle. Let this verdict remind us that justice, though imperfect, must never be abandoned. Anna whispered to Mark, "It's over." Mark shook his head in disbelief, tears streaming. "I'm free." Outside, the sunlight spilled through stained glass, casting colorful patterns across the marble floor, symbols of hope and renewal. The battle had ended, but its scars would linger. Anna looked toward the future, knowing the fight for true justice was far from done, but this victory was a beacon for all who believed in truth. Later, outside the courthouse steps, a press swarm gathered, cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward. Anna faced the reporters, calm but fierce. "This verdict is not just for Mark, but for every person silenced by injustice," she declared. Mark stood beside her, his voice steady despite exhaustion. "I am grateful, but this fight continues." The crowd listened, some nodding, others skeptical. Reporters pressed questions about corruption and systemic flaws. Anna replied, "Transparency and accountability are the pillars of justice. We must build stronger institutions." The sun began to set behind them, casting a golden glow over the moment. Despite the triumph, the weight of the ongoing struggle was clear. Their victory was hard won, but the path ahead remained steep and uncertain. That evening, Anna sat alone in her modest apartment, the day's exhaustion settling deep. She stared at a photo of Mark and his mother, smiling despite the trials. Her phone buzzed, a message from Maya. "The fight continues, but we made a difference." Anna whispered, "Yes, we did." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of victory mixed with sorrow. Justice was fragile, often delayed, and rarely pure, but it was worth fighting for. Outside, city lights twinkled beneath a velvet sky, indifferent yet alive. Anna rose, determination reignited. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new truths, and new hope. Tonight, she allowed herself a brief moment of peace, a promise to keep pushing until justice truly prevailed. The final scene lingered in the quiet courtroom. Judge Morrison remained seated alone, the gavel resting before her. She murmured softly, "Justice is never blind. It sees, it listens, it suffers." Her gaze drifted to the empty gallery, the echoes of the trial still hanging in the air. Outside, footsteps faded, and a soft breeze stirred the papers on her desk. The last words hung, haunting and unresolved. In every case, the truth waits patiently, until we dare to find it. The camera pulled back slowly, leaving the courtroom bathed in fading light. A silent testament to a justice always in flux, a story never truly ending. The echoes of this case would reverberate, a sharp, lingering silence that invited reflection, hope, and unease.